Good morning, Dave.
Hey, Annika, I'm trying to. There we go. I'm in.
Oh,
Hello.
you're in. Oh, here, finally you're here. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Today's Christmas.
Today is Christmas.
I think I'm going to break into song.
You said
Mhm.
you didn't like a lot of the songs.
I don't like any of them. Well, no, that's not true. Keep going.
Well, this is the fourth week of Advent. It's
Mhm.
also our last in our 2023 Advent series. And you called this one The Arrival. Each episode has had a theme, and this one is The Arrival. But maybe the biggest takeaway from this whole series that we've been doing, even though some of these talks are repeats, re-releases, should we say, the takeaway this year is that you're real Scroogey.
Right. Around Christmas.
Yeah, around Christmas. Well, I mean, should I reveal to our audience that maybe you're kind of Scroogey other times of year too?
Not Scroogey, curmudgeon-y.
Fine, curmudgeon-y.
Kind of a, curmudgeon-y, huggy guy.
I'm
Whatever.
gonna
Yeah.
do like a secret episode of like what Dave is like behind the scenes or something.
Yeah, I think they know actually that I'm a curmudgeon. Anyway. But the
Well,
Silent
anyway,
Night thing, I know that offended you.
yeah, super offensive that you don't like Silent Night. But the real reason you ended up talking about that and this takeaway from this series in 2023 is just this theme that the over romanticizing of the story just ruins it. Right, Dave?
I think it does. Yeah. And because what it does, it turns it into what sounds like a fairy tale. And there's just so much to the story. It's why I really enjoyed a few years ago, I kind of made this connection, but I love enjoying this, what I think is an epic story, this
Yeah.
Advent episode that's part of a bigger God story, but comparing it to epic stories, movies that we've all seen, like Lord of the Rings. I'm rewatching that this Christmas season with my grandson late at night. Star Wars is another example of that. Those are epic stories, sweeping stories, several episodes to the story. And I think that's the God story. And all of them, these epic stories, including Advent, Christmas, God story, um, involves a cataclysmic conflict. We talked about the fact that all of these epic stories are kind of against all odds. There's an impossible mission and to save the entire universe against the forces of evil, and the evil forces are dark. It's really interesting because the symbolism of all these, it's dark. They're dark. They're insurmountable. In Lord of the Rings, you had orcs and elves and wraiths. Wraiths. Those are spirit like apparitions. So there's these things floating around, and they're very scary. In Star Wars, it was Darth Vader and the evil empire, and they talked about going to the dark side. So it was all dark and scary. Harry Potter, he's dealing with Voldemort and Malfoy and Snape, and it's scary, and things are floating around. But the heroes, and this was a big deal, in all of these epic stories, including the Advent story, the heroes are almost always unremarkable, unlikely, ordinary at best. Frodo and Sam in The Lord of the Rings were hobbits coming against, these evil, the orcs. And how do you fight an orc and all that kind of stuff? Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, at the beginning of his journey, he had no clue. Remember, he was just this goofball, irresponsible, didn't even know who he was, where he came from. Harry Potter, that's another one of these kinds of stories. He was just a nerdy kid, and he's the good guy. He's got this power. He doesn't even know, blah, blah, blah. You know that whole thing. And the Advent story is very much the same. It's weird to me how it all kind of lines up, because the hero of this Advent story is kind of Mary and Joseph as well. But Mary's a 15-year-old peasant. She's a hobbit. Like, oh yeah, she's gonna save the world, but here she is. When the angel appears to her and says this thing about the life of God being born in her, she's caught up, not unwillingly, but she wasn't looking for it, but she's caught up in this cataclysmic conflict to save the human race. literally, from what had been destroyed and messed up in the fall, to reconcile and restore all things to the Creator God. And you got to deal with all the forces of evil, which Mary and Joseph are having to deal with. No orcs or elves, no spirit-like apparitions in the Advent story, just all the demons of hell. That's what you have in the Mary story. In fact, if that's not an exaggeration, all these demon things and all these movies that's evil. Well, yeah, it is evil. It needs to be evil. You need to see it for what it is. My favorite Christmas text, you know what it is. It's Revelation 12. I remember the year I did that, and I couldn't wait because it was what I called it was Christmas Revelation style. And it was in juxtaposition to the Thomas Kinkade paintings that were like, it's Christmas Day. Or a Tennessee Christmas. Remember, what's her face who used to say, whatever.
Amy Grant.
Amy Grant's
A Tender Tennessee Christmas.
Tennessee Christmas. Sorry, I almost ruined your Christmas by singing. But
You
Revelation
singing
12, I
for
love
all-
it. It's so incredible. Revelation chapter 12 opens with a sign that is in heaven, and the sign is a woman clothed in the sun and the moon under her feet, and she's got a crown with 12 stars, and she's with child about to give birth. And when she cries out in labor pain, she's in incredible pain, about to give birth. Behold, verse 3, a red dragon. In Christmas, it's a red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, 10 diadems on each head, standing in front of the woman, ready to pounce. As soon as that baby's born, that dragon is going to pounce, and when the baby is born, the dragon pounces and he misses the baby, but the tail of the dragon in verse 4 sweeps 1/3 of the stars out of the sky, which is a symbolic way to talk about something that was happening on earth. It was the slaughter of the innocents when the dragon, embodied in Herod, this maniacal king, finds out about a rival king, a baby somewhere. He sets about to kill every son, child in Israel. It's the slaughter of the innocents. But Mary and Joseph hear about it because they're tipped off by an angel. Can you see this in the movie? You almost don't read it in the Bible. Somebody needs to make a movie because they're tipped off by an angel, which we think is what? If it was Lord of the Rings, okay, he gets tipped off by an angel, don't go there, go there. And so they go. They escape to Egypt by the skin of their teeth. Sigh of relief. But as soon as they take a breather, you start hearing this voice in Ramah. Rachel, we hear, is weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted. So they got away and everybody's happy, but there's something else really bad going on at the same time, because the children were no more. It's the slaughter of the innocents. So have a holly jolly Christmas. Go. Here's the deal. I'm not against holly jolly Christmas. Just let's remember that ain't the story. Have a holly jolly Christmas. I watched that movie. It's just not this story. But it all began once upon a time, this story, in the days of Caesar Augustus, who issued a decree for a census to be taken of the entire inhabited earth. And because he did issue that edict, this king, this Roman Empire, the emperor named Augustus Caesar, because he issued the edict, a young girl named Mary and a young man named Joseph began a very frightening journey to a place called Bethlehem. They lived in Nazareth. They were going to Bethlehem because they had to register in the town that they were born, and that was Joseph's lineage, where at the worst possible time, now think about this, because, I mean, when they show up in Bethlehem and she gives birth, it's Christmas. You can't get a room. Come on, this is funny. You can't get a room. It's Christmas. Yeah, and Joseph didn't prepare. I mean, I bet they had a big fight. And Mary's going, Joseph, come on, think ahead. Anyway, it's Christmas. If I say it one more time, will you laugh? No, you won't.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about my own husband, who for sure would not have thought ahead and booked a room.
But it's Christmas. Oh, it's not Christmas. That's the joke. Okay, if you have to explain a joke, it ain't funny. So I'll let that go. But they did the best they could. The baby was born, and there they are, in over their heads, saying yes to God, but holy moly, what is going on? So they wrap him in a cloth and they lay him in a feeding trough, and it smells like horse crap in there. And then there's the shepherds, another part of the story. It was a movie, all of a sudden it would shift. What are we looking at this for? Who are watching their sheep by night. Important, symbolic. It was dark at night because it had to be dark. Why? Because it's that kind of story. It's an epic story with an impossible quest and a cataclysmic conflict between good and evil, between darkness and light. So when the angel of the Lord appeared to the shepherds and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, it wasn't dark anymore. All sorts of symbolic stuff, but that's part of all these epic stories. And it was then, when the glory of the Lord shone to the shepherds, that the words of Isaiah might have come back to certain people, not everyone, but some would remember this promise that those sitting in darkness would one day see a great light. And people start getting their hopes up. But the light was actually a person. It wasn't a light. I mean, people maybe saw lights and the glory shone and maybe it was bright, but the light of which Isaiah spoke wasn't a light, it was a person. John 1 verse 9, and in him, this person was life, and the life in him was actually what the light was, and he was the true light, says John in John 1 verse 9, the true light that would give light to all people. But catch this now, this light that would be revealed to all people, but not everyone could see it. In Jesus' day, when this baby was born, everybody in the world wasn't going, it's here. Nobody knew. The whole point is it's obscure in a barn in Bethlehem. So not everyone could see this life, this light. And so not everyone would know, in part because this light, this life, it started so freaking small. It's a baby, hidden almost hidden in a little manger barn, and entirely unremarkable. It's just a little baby in a tiny town called Bethlehem with a 15-year-old mom who isn't married, and she's in a boatload of boop. But even when he grew, that is, Jesus grew, this theme continues. And this is really important as you think about other things that are going on in the world, because this is what has the smell of God on it. Because even when he grew, Isaiah says he had no stately form or majesty. This was the promise. This is how you'll spot him. There's not going to be anything about him that that will make you go, aha, must be God. He had no stately form or majesty, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. So there was nothing to cause us to recognize him as God. Ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine on the playground at recess? I think he's God. Look at him glowing. No, nothing like that. Even when he grew, nothing like that. Nothing to cause us to recognize him as being the light, because he didn't come as a flash of light or a blazing fire. He came like a flickering flame, or maybe a solitary candle. He came as a baby. And I like babies. We have a new baby in our kind of extended family right now, and it's wonderful. And it's weird to watch all the ladies, women, just love holding a baby. And I like babies. I think they're cute. But they're not much help. If I was going to war, I wouldn't pick the baby. I mean, I would protect the baby. It's just, I love it. There was a confrontation in that whole thing. And so at Christmas, we light candles. And I think maybe a lot of people go, I just love that. Yeah, well, it isn't for atmosphere, although it does create some nice atmosphere. But the candles at Christmas, I think, and this is how I came to embrace them because I couldn't stand them, they communicate something, because a candle is nothing. It's a little light, it's a little flicker and can be so easily blown out, just like the baby. What hope is this? And but we're lighting a candle because this is where it starts. This is how the story starts. So when you tell the Christmas story, I just think we need to tell the whole story. And I wanted us to tell the real story. Not the romanticized version. And this is my Nadia Bolz-Weber quote. Then the sanitized and romanticized version that she calls the suspended reality version of Christmas, that has diluted the story into the sentimental mush of a Hallmark car or a card or a Thomas Kincaid painting, because God did not enter the world of nostalgic make-believe. I'm going to say that again because it's a good line by Nadia. God did not enter a world of nostalgic make-believe, because the story of Christmas reveals a God who entered into a world as it actually is, just like ours. So it's just as violent and just as disturbing as ours, with rulers like Herod and places like Rome and diseases like cancer and COVID, and all that raises a question. What does the Advent story about the birth of a baby mean in the face of cancer and COVID and Rome and Herod and our equivalents of all those things? To answer that, I want to read a poem because I'm a big poem guy. I love this poem. It's written by a Jesuit priest named Daniel Berrigan, who in this poem is, I just want you, I'm going to read, I want you to listen to it and look for this stuff, because he's unflinching in this poem in naming the harsh realities of the world we live in. It's not this fairy dust, everything's great. But at every turn in this poem, he confronts those realities with the promise of Christ's presence right in the middle of these realities. So listen to this as I read it. What is true, I'm going to read what is true and what is not true. It is not true, he says. The creation and the human family are doomed to destruction and loss. This is true. But God loved the world so much he gave his son, that whosoever would put their faith in him would not perish, but enter into an eternal kind of life. It is not true that we must accept inhumanity and discrimination, hunger and poverty, death and destruction. It is true that he came to give life, and that abundantly. It is not true that violence and hatred will have the last word. This is true. Unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. And now I'm getting mushy. And the government shall be upon his shoulders. His name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, the Everlasting King, the Prince of Peace. It is not true that we are victims of the powers of evil. Is there evil? Does it hurt? Yeah, we are not victims of the power of evil who seek to rule the world. This is true. To me, it has been given authority in heaven and earth, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the earth, says Jesus to us. It is not true that we have to wait for those who are specifically and specially gifted, like the prophets of the church, before we can become prophets, before we can become peacemakers. This is true. I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters, they will prophesy, and your young men will see dreams, and your old men will see visions. I think I flipped that. It is not true that our hopes for liberation, for the liberation of mankind, of justice and human dignity, of peace as well, are not meant for this earth and for this history. This is true, that those sitting in darkness have seen a great light, and the light was the true light, but it wasn't a blazing light. The first Christmas morning, indeed, nobody in Israel, very few anyway, saw a great light, more like a little candle that could easily be blown out. It's incredible it survived. Just a puff of wind, gone. Just a baby, little baby in a feeding trough, but it wasn't extinguished. Because when the dragon pounced, embodied in this homicidal king named Herod, the dragon missed. And then the dragon pounced again in the sequel. to Advent. If you fast forward it, and I'll give you a little preview of what comes after the Advent episode, because Easter's coming and the dragon pounces again because they nailed him to a cross and they thought they really had him. He's dead. Done. Got him. But God raised him up. So the dragon missed again. And that's when this flame, this little candle flame that kind of flickered in the Advent episode, began to spread at Pentecost. 3,000 tongues of fire on their heads. Weird tongues, isn't it weird? Tongues, small. Why? Such a small, look. Tongues of fire. 3,000 tongues of fire. Something's spreading here. And then it became more as these little tongues of fire turned into a blazing fire. And it spread all over the earth. And it's continuing to spread today. And so there's your joy to the world. Now, Merry Christmas. And that's all I got.
At the very beginning, and I think I mentioned this in our first Advent episode this year, but it's been more offline in our conversations, Dave. We talked about this fighting for our faith and wanting to remember the story. And it's part of how, we jumped back into these videos as you realized that you were at a spot where you needed to be back into the story and fight for your faith in that way. And
Needed to remember it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what those tears are?
Yeah. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think what's frustrating is when we try to remember it, but we are remembering the sanitized version, right?
Doesn't do anything. Maybe it does for some, not me.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't, not the impact that I need, because I do find myself living in some ways in a world that feels dark, in a way that there's lots of uncertainty.
Yep.
Raising teenagers in this world and trying to find our way as a family, and a husband who's a police officer. I mean, this is just, the world is not an easy place, no matter who you are and what.
Or when you lived.
Yeah.
Right.
I love how these talks that you did really challenged me to pay attention to my life. That sometimes it's about the paying attention to the people around me and the flickers of light that are already there that I've ignored or not seen.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying reminds me of, I think we said this in the first Advent video, was that we often, and people in Mary's day they were lamenting, Lord, how long? So they're looking for a big thing. So as you kind of share your own personal thing in your life, and it's dark and in the world, and it's easy, and then you go, where's God in all this? And we're looking sometimes in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Here come it doesn't arrive on Air Force One. Sorry. Yeah. That's not where our hope comes from. It's often going to be the little flame of a candle in you, Annika.
Yeah.
Not just even in someone else, but well, what will that do? Just protect the candle. Just keep it burning in your marriage, in your family. And you'd be surprised how that spreads. And that's a story I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get behind that one.
Yeah.
Most days.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, and then when you forget it, you got to get reminded.
Yeah. Well, thank you for needing to remind yourself.
Yep.
Because maybe in a way that I think sometimes you don't realize that your remembering helps us remember. And that's important.
Yeah. Yep. We're all in the same soup. So go have some eggnog.
Yeah. I don't like eggnog.
Jeez Louise. I'm a curmudgeon.
Yeah, I don't
I
like
mean,
it.
not
Well,
like, okay.
Merry Christmas, Dave.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.